And welcome back to the channel. The week that we have all been waiting for with Rezolve. Rezolve's earnings on October 1st. It's even on the trading calendar for earnings. The earnings whisper earnings calendar, I should say. Rezolve, look at that. Rezolve AI Wednesday pre-market. In today's episode, I will be giving you an overview perspective of my thoughts around earnings, what we need to see to get the stock to move higher, what I think we will see, and what the guidance will be. Now, we also had Jim Cramer on Friday say some pretty negative things about Rezolve. It was a very poor report, and if you guys have not watched the last video put out on this channel, you should, because it's covering just what Cramer missed. But if the inverse Cramer effect holds true, Rezolve could get a substantial bump in price to start this upcoming trading week. Now, I also think it is positive to even get Rezolve mentioned on something like CNBC, because people don't really know about the company, hence why we've said it's an early stage opportunity for a while. And that could even in and of itself, not just the inverse Cramer effect, but drive people into the stock. Just getting more eyeballs on the stock is good. So I actually think what Cramer said, although it was most of it was false, it was still a positive for Rezolve just to get mentioned on air for 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, so we're going to get into all of this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give my thoughts on where the stock can go, all of that as well. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. It helps push these videos out to more people, which is clearly a win-win for everyone involved, okay? If you guys want to come trade with us, check that link out down below in the description of this video. My plan is to be going live on Discord once the numbers immediately come out following the report on Wednesday. We will be live in the Discord first in the trading group to discuss the numbers, what they mean, if they're good or bad, or if the stock's reacting appropriately, look at the technicals, all of that. And then once the earnings call starts, or probably a couple minutes before, we will be going live here on this channel. Then we'll talk about the follow through and the guidance and all of that good stuff live. So we will be covering the conference call live on this channel on Wednesday. It'll likely start at about 8:30 in the morning. We'll see what the actual timing looks like. Could be 8:30, could be 9:30, but we will be live when that does start. So hit that notification bell if you guys want to join us on Wednesday. But with that said, let's get into today's episode on none other than Rezolve AI. So as I just mentioned, again, Jim Cramer said he didn't like the stock, that he tried to paint the stock kind of in a nefarious picture, like the company is pumping shares, you know, higher to sell them to institutions at a discount. Whereas Jim Cramer obviously failed to mention that almost 40% of the stock is owned by institutions. So in that same concept, if that's what they were truly doing, like, insiders are also losing money, which seems very much not the game plan, okay? A company like Rezolve has said many times now they will be strategically raising capital to capture and continue to capture the #1 spot in conversational e-commerce. That they believe the only way that they can actually remain the #1 player in an industry that's going to have competition is by buying out competitors, is by M&A activity, right? By going out and acquiring companies. Well, if you're a company like Rezolve and you're barely break even at, if that, you have to raise capital to go out and fund these acquisitions, okay? And that is what it was all about with the private placement. Now, I think Jim Cramer was really deceptive in what he said on Friday. I don't think people are going to buy what Cramer said. Again, with the same logic of the stock has went up from $1.07 at its low over the past 6 months, hit a high of $8.45. Institutions were willing to do a private placement in the company for $200 million 6 days before earnings. Doesn't that scream good news on earnings? Doesn't that scream a guidance raise coming? Doesn't that scream the stock is probably going to explode higher? Yeah, like the fact that, again, institutions were willing to pay a 400% premium to do a private placement when the stock's up 400% in 6 months is a sign of strength for the business, not a sign of weakness or nefarious activity. So that's just one of the things I will point out. There was a lot that Jim Cramer failed to mention. This was not a pre-revenue company when they went public. Cramer, again, just doesn't understand. He didn't do a good deep dive on the company. It was really half-assed. So check out the last video if you want a full breakdown of that. And if you are in Rezolve, you definitely need to watch that. So try to say that Rezolve putting out so many press releases, keeping investors informed, was somehow a red flag. That to me is a green flag. That to me is a positive. Again, is Microsoft going to put out press releases on some of these, things? No, they're a $4 trillion company. But is a $1 billion company going to try to keep people informed? Do they want the stock as high as possible? Yes, right? So what's important for one company is not going to be seen as important for another company, right? Or important to keep investors informed, right? Hopefully that makes some sense. Now, let's focus on earnings, though. Jim Cramer's Cramer. Okay. October 1st is the only thing that has mattered for Rezolve in a long time. And that's actually 2 parts, right? October 1st is part 1 for guidance for 2026. Part 2, and where the real fireworks happen, is when we get guidance for 2026. The moonshot, if you will, for October 1st, for this Wednesday, is if we get guidance for 2026. If we get guidance for 2026, it could be as high as $1 billion. It could be 500 million. It could be 400 million. Anywhere in that range is going to be seen as a big positive for the stock. I don't know if that happens on October. That might be April that we get that 2026 guidance. Not exactly sure, okay? But we are going to get an updated guidance for the end of this year. Now, here's the deal. If you followed the company for as long as we have, then you understand by June of this year, the company announced they had hit 70 million in ARR. The target Rezolve set at the beginning of this year was 90 million in ARR by the end of this year. So Rezolve came out in June, said, we already hit 70 million in contracts. We're expecting far in excess of 100 million in ARR. Well, at their first guidance, when they gave 90 million in ARR as their target, they said at 90 million in ARR, they should be close to, if not break even. Okay. I expect that number has moved up. We're going to see a loss in this quarter. But the question is, where is that break even now for profitability with ARR? Okay. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. In June, they had 70 million in ARR. Well, when they announced that they're going to report earnings on October 1st, this was back on September 2nd. Look what their press release said. It said Rezolve AI to announce strong first half 2025 results and accelerated growth momentum. Accelerated as the key word. Okay. Well, if you're just running at that same run rate, you're going to be at 140 million in ARR by the end of this year. If you're accelerated, you could be higher than that. Okay. Now, here's the deal. Back on September 2nd, the stock was a $4 stock. Okay. The stock today is $6.11. Wall Street is firmly expecting more than 100 million in ARR guidance for the rest of this year. Maybe 125 million is pretty well priced in, and I think that's a neutral point. If we get 125 million in ARR guidance, I don't think that's seen as either a big positive or a big negative. If we get 150 million, I think that's where you start to get into positive territory. If we get into something that's like 200 million in ARR guidance for the end of this year, which is my projection personally, that's where this becomes a very bullish catalyst. Okay? Because, I mean, even if you give it like a, you know, similar multiple to something like data centers, right? Which is, you know, which I think Rezolve should have a better multiple than data centers, but they're usually trading about 15 times sales, times that by, you know, 200 million. And you're looking at a $3 billion company. That's more than a double from here. Okay. As I've said before, the real upside comes if we get 500 million in guidance for 2026 times 15, then you're a $7.5 billion company. Then you're going up like 5x from here, right? Or let alone $1 billion in potential ARR guidance for next year times 15. Boom, now all of a sudden you're a $15 billion market cap, and that's over 10x from here, right? That's where things get crazy in 2026. But for now, the base case is we get guidance for 2025, the end of the year. 200 million would be enough to send the stock substantially higher. I think 150 million likely sends you back into the 850 range, maybe $9, maybe $10. If we get something like 200 million, that could send you between $10 and $15 a share. Okay? Again, you could easily double on that, right? That is doubling guidance. Guidance right now is 100 million. The stock has went up a bit, so you're expecting a guidance raise. But I don't think Wall Street is pricing in a doubling of guidance. I think that would be seen as a very positive catalyst. And then again, people start to kind of extrapolate what that means for next year or the year after that or the year after that. Like if these growth rates continue, blah, 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 the company is going to be $10 billion market cap or $20 billion market cap. You get the idea. Rezolve is in such a large industry that they could have growth for the far foreseeable future. The next decade, Rezolve could be growing just with the current kind of business model, right? Rezolve, you know, online e-commerce, even excluding Amazon, is massive. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. For a company that's $1 billion, projecting 100 million in ARR, the growth is going to be at hyper speeds with Rezolve. So again, those are my thoughts. I think, honestly, you could wake up Wednesday and the stock is up 100%. Wouldn't shock me. 50% wouldn't shock me. I do think the sell-off before earnings we have recently seen was very well televised on this channel. I said you were probably going to get a sell-off before earnings because the stock had went up so much so quickly. The RSI was also at 91, 92. Like you were destined to see a little bit of a sell-off. Well, now the RSI is at 54. You are in a very good position to see a rally after earnings. Now, it would not surprise me if Monday and Tuesday are also good. We have seen a lot of unusual option activity that has been very positive in Rezolve. If you take a look at the options, on Thursday, you had 3 trades totaling $231,000, positive order value of 100%. On Tuesday, you had 1 trade totaling $61,000, positive order value of 100%. And over the past week, you had 5 trades totaling almost $5 million with, again, a positive order value of 100%. So all of the trades are bullish. On Friday, you had almost 2 million shares that were covered by hedge funds and institutions. You have 10% short interest of free float. As I've talked about before, insiders on last record owned about 38% of the stock. Private companies own 14%. Retail owned the rest. Institutions owned about 10%. There's anywhere from 70 to 80% of shares that don't trade much, okay? There's about 280 million shares authorized out there, and most trading days, you're getting less, 20 to 30 million in volume, Okay. Some days 12 million. That is not a lot of the float that is trading. So you have 10% short interest. You could really have like 50% short interest on the stock right now because there is not a lot of shares freely trading out there. Most of the stock is being held by longer term investors. So that's where I think you get some of that crazy move on Wednesday. If you get like 100% rally, it could be because short sellers are like, oh shit, we got to get out of this position. And they all kind of have the same idea. They all try to cover and boom, all of a sudden, everyone's fighting over a very small quantity of shares. Now, I've also speculated recently that Nvidia is going to take a stake in a company. I don't know if that's going to happen with certainty. It wouldn't surprise me if it's already happened and we hear about it on the 13F filing. That's not going to be on Wednesday, but when Nvidia's 13F filing comes out, I believe it's going to be in the next week or two. Don't quote me on that, but in the next week or two. And that could also be a big catalyst. But really, October 1st, this Wednesday, should put the stock on the map, right? What do I mean by that? Well, I think Rezolve is going to become a much more well-known retail AI stock following Wednesday, like SoundHound or BBAI or Tempest or Nebius or Applied Digital, okay? A lot of those stocks we were also early to, right? Applied Digital, Nebius, right? It's going to become a more well-known company. Now, I've done this volume analysis before, but basically what I've highlighted is even on some of your highest volume days, you're only seeing between $100 and $200 million worth of trading in the stock. If you look at Tempest AI, Nebius, BBAI, SoundHound, any of these well-known kind of high flyer AI stocks at this point, they're all seeing over $1 billion on any given day of dollar volume in the stock. So what you do is you take an average price of any given trading day. If the high of the day is $89, low of the day is $79, I might go at about $84 or $85 and times that by the volume of the day, right? Just to get an average weighted kind of, price for the stock, times that by the volume, and you're seeing well over $1 billion for these other stocks. What do you think happens if we get $1 billion worth of volume in Rezolve with the float as restricted as it is, with the amount of short interest we have? Again, only 10%, but likely a lot higher than that in all reality. What do you think is going to happen? The stock could go through an explosive move. And yeah, Wednesday is going to be that day. Now, let's talk the negatives. If Rezolve comes out and they do not change guidance, if they're still, saying 100 million, which I don't think that's even possible because back in June, they said they already had 70 million. So what would they do? Would they come out and they say, oh yeah, we now have 90 million. We're still projecting 100 million by the end of this year. That would raise some serious red flags in my mind. That may justify selling the stock to me because that does sound very deceptive. Okay. Even again, down to the press release they put out. Again, quote, Rezolve AI to announce strong first half 2025 results and accelerated growth momentum. That would not be accelerated growth momentum. Okay. I don't think this is going to happen. But again, just to entertain the bears here, if it did happen, that would be something that would kind of change my thesis a bit. Okay, that would make me say, okay, why are they saying all these positive things? Growth is good and all, but it's not, right? That would be very much a negative catalyst for the stock. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the company's going to say come out and say, hey, we have already achieved 120 million in ARR. We're targeting over 150 million in ARR. Or we've already hit 130 million in ARR. We could be on track to achieve over 200 million in ARR this year. You're going to get something like that, right? They're going to give you the number they've actually hit, and then they're going to give you the guidance that they're projecting by the end of this year. But yeah, if something were to not add up on this earnings, it would be a major red flag. But with that said, let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comment section. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I would love your, again, thoughts on this around earnings. What do you think the ARR target is going to be? How do you justify that? Again, keep in mind, company already said they had 70 million in ARR by June. They were targeting 90 million. I think it's very unlikely that they're not over 100 million in ARR at this point. Again, we went through June, July, August, September. 4 months ago, they were at 70 million in ARR. Yeah, I think we could have a big surprise in store October 1st that really puts the stock on the map, starts a bit of a short squeeze, and really takes this thing to the next level. My thoughts, my opinion. Again, I have almost $200,000 invested in the stock. Granted, a bit of it is gains, but I am very heavily exposed to what I'm saying. Specifically, 27,800 shares worth times $6.11. I have about $170,000 invested in the stock today, and don't plan on selling anytime soon. So again, let me know your thoughts. Check out that link down below in the description of this video if you want to come join the trading community. But that is it. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.